Welcome to the SkullKing Fantasy Football Podcast, powered by StatRoute.com. And now, here's your host, Ryan Skullroot.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the SkullKing Fantasy Football Podcast. My name is Ryan Skullroot. I am your host, and I hope that you had a wonderful Week 4 for your fantasy leagues. Mine were kind of up and down, so finished, I believe, 3-2 this week. Could have been better, could have been worse. My three teams that won blew the other team out of the water. My two teams that lost got absolutely smoked. So it's been that kind of a season for me. It's either feast or complete famine. So I hope that you guys are not having the same kind of season I am in terms of my leagues. I hope that you guys are feasting like crazy, that our advice is helping you out, and that you guys are absolutely ruling your leagues. Quick announcement real quick. We want to remind you to subscribe to the SkullKing Fantasy Football Podcast. You can do that by hitting the subscribe button, whether you are on YouTube, iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, Castbox, Overcast, whatever podcast listening and or watching platform you use. Make sure to hit that subscribe button. Please leave us comments on our episodes. Leave us reviews and ratings. We would love to hear your guys' feedback on our show, and hope that we are providing you guys the info that you need to win. All right. That was pretty much the only announcement. So why don't we go ahead and get into today's headlines.
Today's headlines.
All right, to start it off, Mr. Saquon Barkley. Barkley is actually looking to try to beat the 6 to 8 week recovery time for his high ankle sprain. He is apparently already out of his walking boot. According to the report that he gave, the report, whoever this reporter is that gave his announcement, he gave it before the Giants game. He gave an update. Saquon believes that he can be back quicker than the timetable suggests. That he is already out of the walking boot seems to suggest good news for the New York Giants. Wayne Gallman did perform quite admirably today in his absence, and so and Daniel Jones performed okay. So it wasn't it hasn't been a total loss yet. It's helped. They've had a couple of not necessarily easy matchups, but they've done pretty well the last couple of weeks, pulling out a couple of wins. So that's helped kind of ease the pain, if you will, of missing Saquon Barkley. But again, the Giants have survived so far. Hopefully they can get Barkley back, and it should make that offense that much more potent. Moving on, Mitchell Trubisky left week 4 with a shoulder injury. It was his non-throwing shoulder from the hit that I saw, landed hard on his shoulder with his arm raised, basically. I'm guessing that this is a separated shoulder. That's what makes sense to me in terms of looking at the injury and how it happened. His left arm was in a sling on the sideline. Chase Daniel played pretty well enough to help that team win and beat Minnesota today. So we'll see how long Trubisky is out. If you're in a super flex league, or 2 quarterback league, Chase Daniel may be worth a pickup for the next couple weeks, especially if you lost Trubisky. Separated shoulders this one could be a couple weeks. Now, the last year he missed, I want to say 2 weeks with an injury. So this is going to downgrade a lot of the offense for the Bears, except for maybe Tariq Cohen. He may keep some of his value. Did score a touchdown today on a pass from Chase Daniel. So he should be okay, but for the most part, this could hurt the rest of the offense for the Bears. Not that they were doing all that well in the first place with Mitchell Trubisky as the quarterback. Let's leave that out there as a qualifier. So, story number 3. Dwayne Haskins came in and part of the way through the game for the struggling Case Keenum. Could be a quarterback controversy brewing. Coming in, he didn't play all that well. Dwayne Haskins, I believe, finished with 3 interceptions in this game against the New York Giants. It didn't help that their top receiving weapon, Terry McLaurin, who Haskins played with at Ohio State, was out with a hamstring injury for this week. So, that being said, not a great start. We will see who gets the start this next week. I have not looked to see who Washington's played yet. I'm still trying to recover from this week, but we will have that in our game previews the next couple days. So that is it for our main stories. A couple other things. T.J. Hawkinson took a shot today. I have not seen any updates yet on him. He was moving all of his limbs, was headed on a cart, guessing for medical testing, probably for a concussion. So we'll see how he does. Jamal Williams, for those of you who saw the Thursday night game, took a vicious shot as well to the head. We will see how he does. From the reports, I believe I heard that he is doing okay. I would not expect him to come back this next week. That's me. Moving on to Jarvis Landry suffered a concussion today. He's another one that was hit hard in the head. Let me see. I know there was a couple more. Nope, I think that was it of the main ones. And then the last thing, Tyreek Hill was inactive this week, not expected to be active next week either in week 5. He's expected to undergo imaging tests on his shoulder this week to determine how much longer he will be out, per sources. Could be about 2 weeks away, but the unbeaten Chiefs will not rush him. They got lucky today and squeaked out a win against the Lions. In my opinion, that game never should have been as close as it was. So, for all you Lions fans, I'm sorry to offend you. I still am not that much of a believer in your team yet. So, that being said, that is it for the headlines. We're going to get into our Kings and Stings section here in just a second. Real quick, we are going to take a quick time out, and then we will come back and go over our Kings and Stings for week 4. All right, so getting into the Kings and Stings, the best and worst performances of week 4 in the NFL. We will start off with the quarterbacks. Then our number 3 king is Lamar Jackson, 247 pass yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 9 rushes for 66 yards in the loss today to the Browns. Still a solid performance from Lamar Jackson. Aaron Rodgers finally has a quarterback 1 week. 422 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. Threw a lot to Devontae Adams. Finally got him going. One of those touchdowns was to Jimmy Graham. Finally got him going a little bit. So good to see that the Packers offense actually does have a pulse. And part of the thing with the Jamal Williams injury, they were basically forced to pass the ball. Aaron Jones got nothing going on the ground. So our number 1 king of the week, Mr. Famous Jameis Winston, 385 yards, 4 touchdowns, 2 of those to Chris Godwin, 1 interception that was actually returned for a touchdown. He manages to get the win in L.A. over the Rams, and as a Seahawks fan, I absolutely love it. Could be interesting this Thursday night as the Rams visit Seattle in the Thursday night game. Should be a whole lot of fun I'd say it's for first place in the division, but the 49ers technically are undefeated, having a bye in week 4. So we'll see how that goes for going into week 5. Moving on to our running back kings of the week. The honorable mention, he was technically, I think, running back 5, but because of the numbers that he put up, I wanted to make sure that he got mentioned. Mr. Leonard Fournette, who I have not been a believer in for his whole career so far. 29 carries for 225 yards today in Denver. helped seal the win with his ability to run the ball and run down the clock. Also had 3 targets, 2 catches for 20 yards. So great game from Leonard Fournette as an honorable mention. Our actual 3 Kings, Christian McCaffrey, 27 carries for 93 yards and a touchdown. Also had 10 targets, 10 catches for 86 yards. Just, again, a continually solid matchup and solid game from him. Number 2, a guy that we never would have expected to be up here, Mr. Jordan Howard, 15 carries, 87 yards, 2 touchdowns, 4 targets, 3 catches for 28 yards and a touchdown. That's definitely something we never thought we'd hear, about Jordan Howard, with how ineffectual he was in the passing game with his, ping pong paddle hands that he's got. Managed to catch a nice pass on a swing pass and take it in for the touchdown in the game on Thursday night against the Packers. Was a solid surprise with his performance. And the number 1 King, I have to admit, I was not high on him for this week. I've loved him for season long, but I was not high on him for this week. I think I moved him down to about running back 15 this week in my rankings. Mr. Nick Chubb, 20 carries, 165 yards, 3 touchdowns. One of those was from 88 yards. Also finishes with 4 targets, 3 catches, and 18 yards. So a big game from him in terms of the run game. Phenomenal job overall by the Browns today. Great job getting the solid win on the road against Baltimore. Moving on to our wide receiver Kings. Number 3, Robert Woods finally has a big game. 15 targets, 13 catches, 164 yards. I knew that they were not going to keep him down forever. I think that Cooper Kupp is going to be the most consistent in that offense, but Robert Woods is the leader in terms of that run, in terms of that wide receiver room. I think he is going to be probably he may finish the highest in terms of total fantasy points. I think it'll be between him and Kupp. Cooks is going to be your boomer bust guy. We've said that over and over again, but Woods, I think that we could be looking at more games like this from him. Number 2, Devontae Adams, finally on this list. 15 targets, 10 catches, 180 yards. He was absolutely ripping up that Philadelphia secondary. And our number 1 King of the Week, Mr. Chris Godwin, 14 targets, 12 catches, 172 yards, 2 touchdowns. Phenomenal game from Chris Godwin. I know that a lot of people were a little worried about whether or not he was going to play. And what do you know? He puts up a phenomenal performance after missing most of the week with a hamstring injury. So, great job from him. Moving on to our tight end Kings. I'm hoping to see this guy on here a whole lot all season. Mr. Will Dissly, number 3, 7 catches, 57 yards, and a touchdown. Just a great game from Will Dissly. Again, he is the number 3 target for the passing game on the Seahawks. I think that he continues this. He is going to finish as a mid to lower tight end 1 on the season. Number 2, this is a guy you're probably not going to see on here hardly ever again. Mr. Ricky Seals-Jones, 3 catches for 82 yards and a touchdown. And number 1 overall, Mr. Austin Hooper, 11 targets, 9 catches, 130 yards. I was a big proponent of him having a solid season this year going into the NF or the fantasy draft season. Really happy to see him have just a phenomenal game and really do well this week. All right, turn the page. Now let's get into the not so great performances from this week. The QB stings. We'll start at QB. Now, most of these, the way that we kind of do these is these are guys that, for the most part, are started. Well, with the QBs, I took a little bit of liberties just because there were guys that were streamed because of injuries. So they may not be owned in like 60 to 70% of leagues, but they're owned enough and were possibly started. I've seen enough people that started them. I was going to throw them in here. So number 1 was, here. Our honorable mention is Mitch Trubisky. We try not to do injuries as part of this, but with him getting injured, 9 passing yards before he got injured. And that was it for him. Case Keenum getting pulled after 37 passing yards and an interception. So he's our number 3 sting of... Yeah, our number 3 sting. Actually, technically, he's number 1. Brady is our number 3, 150 passing yards, 1 interception. I was kind of expecting this. I had him marked down a little bit. I didn't think that he was going to put up all that great of numbers against the Buffalo defense. Buffalo defense playing very, very well, and so I was kind of expecting this out of Brady. Our number 2 sting is Kyle Allen, 232 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions, 3 lost fumbles. Big ouch from him. I was expecting a little bit better with the lack of consistency shown by the defense, especially the defensive backfield for the Texans. And then again, our number 1 sting at the QB position was Case Keenum, 37 passing yards and an interception. Moving on to the running back stings, our honorable mention is Mr. Phillip Lindsay, 53 yards on 9 carries, 1 target, 1 catch for 7 yards. So honorable mention for him. Our number 3 sting is a guy who's been on this list a few times, or a couple times at least, Mr. Sonny Michel, 17 carries for 63 yards. Just not seeming to get the job done for the New England Patriots. We will see if this carries on. I'm very interested to see how the Patriots deal with this. And while they have had a couple of tough rush defenses that they've had to face, they've also faced Miami and he hasn't done much. So again, this is something to monitor. We'll kind of keep watching, see how this goes. Number 2 running back sting is Mr. Marlon Mack, 11 carries for 39 yards. I believe he was also injured in this one, but had a fair chunk of time in the game against Oakland. Wasn't really able to produce much. And our number 1 sting is Adrian Peterson, 11 carries, 28 yards. All right, moving into our wide receiver stings. Now, I understand that Will Fuller is kind of a boomer bust type of guy. He's either going to be great or he's going to be terrible. And he's going to be going back and forth between whether he's on the sting side or the king side. Today, he is our number 3 sting, 6 targets, 3 catches for 23 yards. Number 2 is Mr. Odell Beckham Jr., 7 targets, only 2 catches for 20 yards, but that was because Jarvis Landry was going crazy for 8 catches and 186 yards before he got hit with a concussion. And our number 1 sting of the week, this really hurts for all those people who had a Thielen about this season. Adam Thielen, 6 targets, 2 catches for 6 yards. And this has become the result of a anemic offense for the Minnesota Vikings that if Dalvin Cook can't get anything going, it sure is not going to happen through Kirk Cousins. So moving on to our tight end stings. Number 3 is Jared Cook, 6 targets, 3 catches for 21 yards. Again, we have gone ad nauseum about how we don't believe in Jared Cook this year, and this is just continuing to prove it, although I know that this was a tough defense in Dallas to go up against. So we'll see if he ever comes out of it. Moving on, going from the highest of highs to almost the lowest of lows, Mr. Greg Olson, last year number 1 tight end king, moves to number 2 tight end sting, 4 targets, 2 catches for 5 yards. And our number 1 sting, though not completely his fault, 2 targets, 1 catch, 4 yards, Mr. Delaney Walker. The Titans offense was able to do so much with A.J. Brown, 90-some yards and 2 touchdowns, as well as Corey Davis, who I believe had 91 yards and one touchdown. Basically, they went into cruise mode and just ran the ball, so Delaney Walker didn't even have to show up second half. So, unfortunately, that hurts for all those people who started Delaney Walker. I do expect this to be a one-time stop here. Maybe he'll have another week where he ends up being here again, but overall, he is going to be a solid tight end 1 throughout the season. All right, so let's do a quick little cover of the Monday Night Football game, which this one's going to be ugly, to just being honest here. The 0-3 Bengals visit the 0-3 Steelers, and at least the Bengals can say they've had some offense going. I believe they are, 18th in offense because they're like number 5 or something in passing. They're the worst running team in the league, though, as far as yards go, according to NFL.com. So, real quick, going over the Bengals. Andy Dalton I have as a quarterback 2 with some upside to possibly finish with quarterback 1 numbers. That may not be all that difficult with how many quarterbacks just underperformed this week. This was an ugly week for quarterbacks and ranking quarterbacks, to be completely honest. Joe Mixon I have as a mid to low end running back 2, simply because he is very talented. He can run the ball, but he also is very good at catching the ball out of the backfield. So because of his pass catching abilities, I do believe he can finish with running back 2 numbers. John Ross I have as kind of a low end wide receiver 2, more on the boom or bust side, because we saw the bust side last week, and the boom in week 1 and 2. And Tyler Boyd I have as kind of a high-end wide receiver 3. He's going to be the more stable, more reliable for continuous production. He's much less boom or bust in this Bengals offense. In terms of the tight ends, I don't really trust any of them. I think they're all tight end 2s, whether it's Eifert, Uzoma, doesn't matter. Tight end 2, they're streamable only. So as far as the Steelers go, Mason Rudolph I have, again, as a quarterback 2. Mid quarterback 2. He's usable in a deeper 2 quarterback league. James Conner, well, he hasn't necessarily been running the ball all that well since the Big Ben injury. He does catch the ball well out of the backfield. I still think, again, he can put up mid to low end running back 2 numbers. Juju Smith-Schuster, mid to low end wide receiver 2. He's not the same without Ben. He's starting to look like he's not the same without AB. We'll see if Rudolph can get things turned around for this offense. Honestly, there's nothing that the Steelers, in terms of yardage, whether it's giving up on defense or doing on offense, I believe they're in the bottom 5 or 6 in all categories. So, as far as the rest of the receiving core for the Steelers, Deontay Johnson and James Washington, I have them as boom or bust wide receiver 3 or 4s. They could get something going against this Bengals defense, who's been known to give up big plays. They could do something here. I'm hoping to see the Rudolph Washington connection actually happen during the season, not just preseason. So. And as far as the Steelers tight ends go, I believe Vance McDonald has already been ruled out for the Monday Night Football game. Nick Vannett may do something. He's the one that they just got in the trade from Seattle. I'm not totally expecting much out of Nick Vannett, simply because it's his first week with the team. So we'll see. I, for one, I would not trust him as a fantasy asset for this week. So, all right, that is it for the SkullKing Fantasy Football Podcast. I want to thank you guys for taking the time to listen. I hope that your Monday night matchups are able to save your week if necessary. We hope that you guys are enjoying this podcast and that the advice and the rankings we have been giving you guys have been helping you rule your leagues. Again, my name is Ryan Skullroot. We will talk to you guys tomorrow with our Waiver Wire Madness episode. Again, we will see what kind of hidden gems we can find for you. Again, my name is Ryan Skullroot, and we will talk to you later. Hey, SkullKing Nation, thank you for listening to the SkullKing Football Podcast. Did you like this episode? If so, be sure to go to iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and YouTube to subscribe. Also, please leave us a rating and reviews to let us know how we can better help you rule your leagues.